Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do the obligatory monthly favorites, monthly wrap-up. What the heck do I call this thing anymore? It is my December 2023 wrap-up, the last one for the year. I have so many exciting things to share with you. I don't even know where to start. We'll get to decks. I'll leave timestamps and all that in case you just are here for the decks and that's cool. You don't want to hear my rambles, all good. I don't even know where to begin because there was so much that was happening, was going on, so many things that I was creating, but all of it feels like a big blur at this point now, right? All right, what did I get up to in December? I spent most of the latter half of this year preparing for the changes that are happening in my membership here on this channel. I've got a new practice, so we've been doing a guided tarot practice for the last 2 years. So that actually came to an end in December. We did our last monthly medicine and it was really, really bittersweet. Our theme was endings and beginnings. You'll see that in my journal when we get to that part of the video. But I have to say that about halfway through December, I was I'm ready for the ending. I'm done. I'm done with this year. I want to move on. I want to get on to all the new, cool, exciting, fun things. So I struggled a little bit to actually follow through with my tarot practice all the way toward the end of the month. But I did it. I did it because it's important to me. When I make a commitment to show up for something, I like to show up for it. Endings and beginnings. Yeah, we brought our 2-year monthly medicine practice to a close. And it probably would have been a little more bitter had there not been this super exciting, sweet thing that's going to follow in 2024, which we are already getting into in my membership. And that is the fellowship practice, which is a narrative tarot practice / journey / adventure. So the whole idea behind this is loosely inspired by D&D. We use D&D dice. There's this whole narrative shared journey experience for those who want to participate in it. We're going to have all kinds of activities and events and group things, as well as just the practice that you can do either individually or on your own. Beneath all of that, it's still all the same personal growth work we've been doing. We're adding a narrative journey over the top of it. We're adding some gameplay elements to the top of it. We're basically adding dice casting along with rune casting or ohms or Lenormand or any other system that you want to incorporate in it. This year in my practice is all about expression through play, self-growth through creativity, and seriously just having fun. Because tarot should be fun in my opinion. Yes, we do important work here. I get it. We do. I'm right there with you. But if it's not fun, that is my motto in life nowadays. If it's not fun, why the hell am I bothering? So that's where we're at. I have been spending most of my time preparing for that. It was actually a thing that has been in the makings for over a year now, but the last few months have really been just that push to get all the materials together, to get everything out, to get the whole practice set for the year, because it is a narrative journey. It is a story that builds month after month. If you're interested in finding out more, I do have information on my website. I'll leave that in the description box below for you. Another thing that I did in December was that I added a tier to my memberships. So I already had my Weaver tier, which is where all of the guided practice stuff, the full access to the Discord and all of the chatty goodness that happens there. I also have the support tier at the lower level, which gives you basic access to our Discord server. And then now we have a middle tier with limited access to the Discord server and access to some of the members' videos that I do. So every week I do an additional video for my members. They're usually a bit more loosey-goosey. They're in the moment. There's whatever is happening, going on, working with, what I'm up to, sometimes random babbly thoughts in my head. It is the behind the scenes of my practice of my life. So we now have a middle tier that has access to most of those. That obviously does not include the entire guided tarot practice, which is available at that Weaver level. If you are a Weaver, been a Weaver, nothing's changing for you. Y'all are set. But if you're interested in those extra videos, as well as just hanging out from time to time, because I do lives occasionally with my members, there'll be some opportunities to hang out there as well in that middle tier. But that is mostly for those who just want the extra content, but don't necessarily want the practice or to engage on that particular level. Outside of that, if I am not working on that, if I am not hanging out with my members, which, we have a new Discord. Okay, I'm finally on the Discord bandwagon. That's where I'm hanging out. That is where I interact with all of my members, like on a daily basis, like sometimes on an hourly basis, because like y'all, I'm always on it. For better or worse, I'm always there. We actually have 2 Discord servers now. We have one for channel members, and then I have one for gaming as well, which is a lot of fun because gaming is also like a huge part of what I do if I'm not here doing all of this stuff. Also, the other thing I did in December was I sort of relaunched my other channel. I've done various things with it over the last, 3-4 years, however long I've had it. Done some journaling, done some planning. That will probably still happen there because that is still very much a part of things that I like to do and things that I enjoy. But also over there, I'm going to be sharing more about the books I'm reading, about the books I'm writing, as well as video games, because that's also where a huge chunk of my life goes. That was really fun. I launched that in December. I'm going to be like doing more with it in January. But again, that is a play place for me, is whatever's floating my boat at the moment. Not tarot related, because that all happens here in this space, but everything else that I am into or get up to or, just am thinking about in any random day. So that's been really fun to kind of have that space to play and explore there as well. If you're not following me over there, but you want to see all the other weird stuff I get up to, definitely go check it out. I'll leave a link for you in the description box below. Oh yeah, there was like Christmas in there or something. I was not feeling it for Christmas this year. I just we did a total act your shoe size, not your age Christmas. And we literally bought toys. Okay, there are no children in my house anymore. Everybody is over 20. There are no children besides Tucker. Does Tucker count? I mean, he's a kid. So we just did the completely, we're just going to pretend we're all children again, and we bought nothing but toys. A few, main things that people needed or wanted, but mostly just toys. We bought all toys, and we had a completely just ridiculous Christmas where it was all about the fun, trying to kind of reconnect with the magic that I feel like kind of, maybe it's just me, but kind of goes away when your children aren't into that anymore, when they're not young, they're not excited by all of that. Because they've got real life worries now. So yeah, the joys of adulting. Anyway, we decided to throw all that out the window and we bought toys, silly toys, lots of toys. It was just chaos, full-on chaos. My oldest came home for a visit. That's always fantastic. Love getting to spend time with my whole little family together. And that was pretty much it. I have just been waiting to get to the new things that are happening in 2024 because it's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Do you ever get to that point where in your tarot practice where things just start to feel repetitive and not in a great way? I feel like I'm getting the same messages. I feel like I'm pulling the same cards. I'm doing the same things. So when that happens, I I stop. I reassess. I change things. I do things differently. And this year, the big thing that I'm doing, besides switching up a lot of how I'm journaling and other little small practices that I've been getting up to, the big thing is going to be the narrative tarot journey that we're taking in my membership. But before we get into that, we need to wrap things up for December because I feel like I've done one of these every single month since I started here on YouTube, or pretty dang close to it, which has been going on 5 years now. I cannot believe that. 5 years on YouTube. I think it's 5. I'll have to actually look because now I'm just guessing. But I feel like I've done one of these every single month, every single year, which is really cool. And it gives me this awesome sort of visual scrapbook of what I did, what I got up to. And so while I love sharing it with you all and hearing about what you got up to and what you were doing throughout the month, it's also a great reference for me too. So even though I was just come on December, be done already, it's still cool to look back and to, take a moment to reflect on everything that has happened and that I've done, and particularly my tarot practice, what I've worked with. And for this month, because it was the end of our 2-year monthly medicine journey, that was really cool to experience too. So Okay, so enough with the babbles. Let's switch cameras and I'm going to show you all the beautiful decks that I worked with throughout the month of December. We'll talk about my tarot journal a little bit and take a little flip through that. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the decks that I worked with all throughout December. They were mostly monthly medicine decks because that is pretty much the only practice that I really engaged with throughout the month. And our theme for this was endings and beginnings because, as I mentioned, this brought the end to our 2-year monthly medicine practice because we're moving into something a little bit different. Not that we won't do that again, and not that the new practice isn't sort of similar. Like, it's monthly medicine underneath it with an overlay of narrative storytelling and some game elements built in as well. Endings and beginnings was a really interesting one. I'm gonna jump into the decks and then we'll come back and do a little flip through of my tarot journal. So our first week was our embrace week, and this was asking the question of what have I embraced throughout this practice, throughout this year, just in tarot or in my life in general. And for this, I chose to use the Magical Spirit Oracle and the Gentle Tarot. This is a mass market oracle and an indie tarot deck. This is the linen edition. I have also edged mine. I talked about this pairing in my decks of memorable decks of 2023. Had to remember what year it was. So I'm not going to go into it too much here because I did talk about it quite a bit there. I'm just going to say really quickly, talking about each of these decks, I really love the Magical Spirit, and it actually really surprised me. I didn't think that I would resonate with it quite as much as I do. It's kind of an affirmative sort of deck, but it also has some really kind of kick butt things in it, which I really appreciate. I think the artwork is absolutely beautiful, but it's really these messages that are more actually worked into the artwork that I feel like really work for me. Like, the meaning is in the middle. It's okay. I don't know what I'm doing either. I say that to my members all the time. It's time to leave the old behind. That one doesn't have one. Not all of them have one, but honoring the flow of all the emotions. Don't worry, darling, you'll find your way. I really like the messages that are in this Oracle deck. It's kind of surprised me how much I like them and how often I've actually been pulling this one out. I've paired it with a lot of different decks that I've worked with this month. While I do use my decks weekly in relation to the themes that we're working with, I do also use them for other practices. They stay out for the month, so these are kind of my working decks for the month. I tend to focus on them during those weeks that I'm using them for the practice, but I also pull them into other things and other readings. This definitely the case with this little pairing here. The Gentle Tarot I've talked about many, many times on my channel. This is one of my favorite decks. There's just something about the way this deck reads. It is definitely a gentle deck, very appropriately named. It's very supportive, but I love that it also doesn't shy away from the hard truth of things as well. This is the deck that I go to when I want the hug, I want the reassurance, I want the the gentleness of it all, but I still need a valuable message, and that comes through this deck every single time. And together, I feel like these two decks are just amazing. Oh, I love that we have the portal card on top. Love my portal energy. Between our two aces, I mean, how perfect is that? And the question is, are you ready? And then we have adventure, ancestors, and calling with the Ace of Thunder and the Ace of Wands. I mean, how appropriate is that? Just absolutely love this deck. I love the pairing together, but like I said, I've used the Magical Spirits with a lot of different decks this month. I feel like every deck I worked with this month, maybe outside of the very last pairing that I did to wrap up the year, every other deck that I used, every other tarot deck that I used this month, I feel like really sat well in alignment with the Magical Spirit Oracle. And I wasn't sure actually when I first got it if it was gonna really pair well in my collection with what I have and the type of decks that I tend to work with, but it actually works beautifully. I found lots of different things that it pairs with. The tabletop, the tarot nuages, the mystical palette. It pairs so beautifully with all of those, which were all decks that I worked with throughout the month. And I feel like this is a deck that I'm probably going to keep on hand so that I can pull it into practice. But this little pairing, I mean, I talked about it in my memorable decks because it's definitely been a memorable pairing for me. It's definitely been one that I feel like I'm gonna return to again and again because they just work so well together. I feel like I do tend to read the messages on the card art more than I do the keywords and key phrase, but I do pay attention to those, but I feel like I definitely tap more into what's on the artwork. So this one is, I am in divine flow and move in alignment with the 9 of stones and the 7 of stones. Interesting. Move in alignment with the actual physical things you're creating in your life. That's beautiful. The energy is valuable, protect it well, with the Flower of Wands and the 8 of Thunder. I love how the colors play across these two decks together. Okay, let's do one more because I don't want to spend too much time on these decks because I've already talked about them pretty recently. I love this one. I got it multiple times. It says, darling, don't you remember you're a badass. Keep winging it. And it's the fairy between the Hierophant and Justice. How freaking cool is that? I love it. I cannot see the word darling anymore and not hear it in a certain person's voice now. Oh, I think I said that was going to be the last one, but let's end on this one. Clearly, I'm scattered today, and I'm so ready for the year to be over, so I'm ready to move on. But I did want to give these decks some time and attention, too. So this one's Call Back Your Energy to You with the Ace of Cups and the Emperor. Oh, so beautiful. They're just so perfect together. I love it. Also, just mention really quick that the little guidebook for the Magical Spirit is really wonderful. There's some really interesting write-ups in here. We also have an affirmation spell for every single card, which is fantastic. I really enjoy that. And a manifestation enhancer, which kind of gives you like something actionable to do. So I like that setup because we have the message, we have something to take away with us and something that we can actively do when these cards show up in our lives. And I think that's really cool. So I just want to mention that too, because I think that's a really wonderful thing about this deck. I do use the guidebook on occasion for it, even though like I don't necessarily need it. And like y'all know, that's my favorite. I want a guidebook to be there if I want it, but I don't want to be reliant on it. And this deck does that beautifully. And of course, as you all know, the Gentle Tarot guidebook, whether you have the small one or the larger one, they're both phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend getting into that as well. So the next week was our release week, and the question that we were looking at and working with for this week was, what have I released throughout this practice this year or throughout just our work with the tarot in general? And for this particular week, I used the Tarot Nuages and the Women of Myth Oracle. I'll talk about the Nuages first because I have talked about this one in my memorable decks, pairing it with the tabletop, which is my main way that I'm working with it currently. But I really enjoyed pairing it with this deck for that particular week and a little bit throughout the month. This little Tarot Nuages, like it's super cool. I wasn't sure. It feels like definitely like an alien deck to me. I do love that there's like little goblins in it. The first few times I saw it, I was like, ooh, that artwork is really, really cool, but I'm not sure that it's actually a deck that would work for me. And then I think I saw Marlena working with it a few times and I was like, ooh, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to pick that up. I love the art style. I love the color palette. But really when it came down to it, I kind of like the way it reads. It's a little bit sassy. Sassy is not the right word. It's a little cheeky. Maybe that's a better word. I know they're kind of the same thing, but it's a little cheeky. I like its energy. It's got like dark humor to it. I feel like this is kind of like the humor that people see in the Patrick Valenza decks that I don't always get, but I get it in this one. I mean, I am coming around on the Patrick Valenza decks, right? I've got several of them now and I have been using them. And this to me has kind of a little bit of a similar energy, but I feel like I get this deck better. I don't know. I get the way it relays its messages to me. I get the artwork better, like it makes a better connection for me. But I feel like it has that dark humor to it, which I do really appreciate and really enjoy. But it's also like, it's kind of a hard hitter and it kind of like punched me in the gut for that week, for that question. But I really appreciate it because it was like what I needed to hear, right? So then we have the Women of Myth, and I did talk about this deck in my memorable decks video because this one I've been using a lot, particularly when I'm finding myself in challenge situations. This deck has been really helpful for that. I talked about working with it with the tabletop tarot. I'll leave a link to that video in case you missed it and want to check it out. Because I did go into quite a bit of detail. I think the artwork is stunning. And I love that we have the goddesses, the heroines, and monsters, I think. Goddesses, monsters, and heroines, yeah. And it's a stunning, stunning deck, and I love the way it reads. And actually pairing these two together was really fantastic because it works for me in the same sort of similar way that I was working with the tabletop and the Women of Myth, where I was kind of using this as like, this is my challenge. Whether that's a good challenge or a bad challenge, or I should say a positive challenge or a negative challenge, right? A challenge that's gonna push me further versus a challenge that's gonna try to hold me back, right? Because there's two different ways I think that we can engage with challenge. There's two different ways that challenge shows up. I mean, there's multiple ways, right? Life is shades of gray, but there's two different ways mainly that I think challenge shows up for me. It's either a challenge of something that is going to push me to do, I love this with the collie coming up, and the Tower and the Hierophant. I mean, come on. Come on. This pairing is just phenomenal. Like the way that they work together, I got totally sidetracked by that, but the way that they work together, it is like, this is the thing that's gonna push you through to get to where it is you're trying to go. So whereas I was using the Women of Myth with the tabletop is more like, this is my challenge of like something that I'm struggling to overcome right now. And usually kind of like, it's more of a, in that sort of negative connotation of this is something that's trying to hold me back. This is something that I'm having to overcome. And the tabletop was helping me navigate that in a way that, you know, brought some support to that energy. Whereas I feel like this pairing is all about, these are the challenges that are going to push you forward, that are going to push you beyond your limits, that are going to encourage you to like step outside of the box, like be reckless, take the chance. And I absolutely love this. I feel like that's very much in an energy that I'm sitting with these days. I want to do new things. I want to experience new things. I'm getting outside of my own comfort zone, particularly in like some of the content that I'm making, especially on my other channel. Definitely, you know, getting into something new in my membership, which is so exciting. And I feel like this little combination in particular, and it's always interesting how when you pair different decks, right, they come at it from different perspectives based on, at least for me personally, based on what I'm working with. So this, even though I'm using the same Oracle deck and it's still kind of in that challenge position, it's giving me a totally different energy. This is like a own your power, own your worth, speak your truth kind of a pairing for me. And I really enjoy it. It's got this like total badass energy to it, where it just reminds me that like I can do the thing, right? Whatever it is that I'm trying to do, I can do the thing. And whatever challenges that come up through the process of trying to do that thing, those are things that are going to help me to be better, to grow, to expand. And the Tarot Nuages is like fantastic for really highlighting that and showing me like where I can step into that energy fully and how I can navigate that space in order to like grow more. So it's really interesting to look at a deck that I just said has like dark humor and stuff like that, and then to turn around and say, you know, it's a deck that actually really helps me move beyond my own comfort zone. It's a deck that, yes, it does bring humor to it, but it's kind of like that idea of like, you've got this, like, don't doubt yourself. You can do this. You've got what it takes. Step beyond those boundaries, step beyond what's comfortable and what's known to you, and get into doing the thing, right? And this just works so well for me in terms of supporting that sort of energy. It encourages me to look beyond the surface level. It encourages me to like step outside of my comfort zone. And it's such a beautiful pairing for that. I've actually been working with it quite a bit around the new content that I'm creating and some of the new things that I'm planning on doing in 2024, in particular in terms of stuff on my other channel. So it's been really fantastic for that, because it's been really supportive and showing me like where I can step beyond, where I can face my own fears, face my own self-doubt, and move beyond that. And just this pairing it just feels so empowered in that sense, where it really helps me to see where that energy is, what I need to tap into. And then the tarot helps me kind of expand upon that and look at how I can actually bring that into what it is I'm doing. So the next week was our growth week, and we were looking at in what other ways have we grown this year. So maybe beyond like practice or whatever our initial question was the week previous, we're looking at kind of expanding beyond that, more like just growth of the self in that sense. And for that, I chose the Mystic Palette Tarot and my little pocket Isis Oracle. I have talked about this deck. I think the Mystic Palette Tarot, I think I did a video on it talking about it, because this deck has a lot of personal significance to me. The Legacy of the Divine was my very first tarot deck that I bought for myself, also by the same creator, Ciro Marchetti, and this is one of his newest decks, I think. Maybe not the newest, but one of the newer decks. And it's been like decades, right, between those two decks. Decades between when I got Legacy of the Divine and this deck. And I feel like this deck is the grown-up version, and I feel like it represents all of the growth that I've personally made in my tarot practice over the last, decade or two. I say it that way, it sounds like a really long time, but a lot of the figures in this deck are older, and I really appreciate that. And it just, the way that it reads for me, it feels very much in alignment with my own personal growth journey. So this is the deck that I chose for that. Again, I think I have a full video on it. And I paired it with the Isis Oracle. This is the pocket edition that has the messages on the back. I do have the full size. I love them both. I just ended up choosing this one because the sort of borderless artwork just looked really beautiful on the table. I feel like the Isis Oracle, and I've talked about this before with this particular artist, sometimes the images feel a little bit hypersexualized to me, and I like that the kind of tarot deck balances that back out. I think not so much in the Isis Oracle, but in some of the other decks that I've seen by this creator. And I feel like the tarot deck does a really good job of kind of counterbalancing that. Also, I feel like this really sits in that higher realm vibration, whereas this feels more down into the earth and the mundane. I mean, we're kind of back to my usual, like, as above, so below sort of thing. And that's just an energy that really resonates with me. I love pulling those two things into my reading because they feel very significant parts of my life. As I think I mentioned in the memorable, might have been in the memorable decks, like, or maybe it was in a member video, I don't remember, but like my feet are always planted here on the ground, but like my head and my soul and my heart are like, they're always off wandering elsewhere. And a little combination like that really represents that beautifully for me, because we have that divine, cosmic, connected energy represented through the Isis Oracle, and then the Mystical Palette feels like it's very rooted and grounded into like the reality of things, which is so funny because it's like full of like these sort of fantasy style art, right? But it feels very grounded and rooted into nature. It feels very, very Taurus energy to me. And I think part of it is also the color palette of this particular one. I think there is a more colorful edition. This to me is beautiful. This is right where I want it to be. It's got an energy that I really love, and working with these two together as a way to kind of look at where I have grown, being that the Mystical Palette already sort of represents that grown-up version of me versus that 20-year-old me who got the Legacy of the Divine all those years ago, right? And now this is, me in my 40s working with this deck. And I feel like it just really does represent that growth that I've had over not just this last year, but over the last, 20 years. And it's a lot to take in. It really, really is. But I enjoy working with the Mystical Palette. I use it a lot for very personal readings, particularly when I am looking at things around, how I've grown and changed since when I very first started coming into this sort of work versus, what I do now and how I engage with it now. So moving into our last week, and our last week of monthly medicine, we had our remember, which is what should I carry with me into my practice for the coming year. And for whatever reason, I went totally outside the whole sort of aesthetic I have had going on all month long, and I ended up picking the Future Ancestor Tarot and the Hedgewitch Botanical Oracle. I felt like this deck and these two decks together, it like has that sort of clean slate energy. It's probably all the white space, it's the minimal color palettes, but I like to kind of think of the end of the year as that slate clearing. And this deck does such a great job of kind of like stripping away everything else and just kind of getting to the heart of something. And I feel like that was a great energy for looking at, what do I want to carry with me? Like if I strip everything else away, what do I want to carry with me into the next year? And this deck for me just kind of really gets to the heart of whatever the thing is, the question, the issue. And it does so in this really gorgeous, comforting way. And then I paired that, as I often do with this particular deck, with the Hedge Witch Botanical Oracle, which is one of my favorite and probably most used oracles. I love all the white space. We have these gorgeous flower illustrations, and there is just a single keyword on it, which really provides a fantastic focal point for my readings. There's also a lovely guidebook with this deck, so you can get into, you know, more information about the plants themselves, but I really like to focus on the art and the keywords. So these two decks together are kind of like, you know, there's like standards in my practice, right? I work with these together a lot because they just give me that support that I need. I love the white space. It feels very calm and reassuring. And when things get really heavy and chaotic, as they tend to do at the end of the year, this is the type of a deck that I like to go to just kind of like, wow, take a step back, take a breather. Like, I know we're ready to move on, and I've got like all this energy and it really needs to like come out, and I need to explore it and all of that. But this little pairing encourages me to like just take a beat, take a breath. And I need to do that in between things. I need to do that quite often because I can be full on all the time and I'm into all the things and I rarely stop. And that means I also don't always have time to just kind of sit in that stillness, sit in that reflective energy. And that's something that I feel like I really need to do, particularly at the end of one year moving into another, because like I'm so ready to jump off into all the new things. And like, I'm just, you know, come November, I'm already like trying to be in January. Like I could just totally skip December most years. I'm just ready to start over. I'm ready to start fresh. I'm ready to move on to new things. And this little combo though, it just encourages me not necessarily to like sit in any sort of grief about the end of the year. Although if you have grief around the end of the year, I think this is a fantastic deck for it. Somebody had mentioned or asked me about grief decks. I think I've mentioned it before. This would be the one I would absolutely recommend. Anytime you're working through any sort of grief work, it's definitely one I would go to. I don't really have grief around the end of the year. I'm more in the like angsty, want to get going, like can we just be done please? And I tend to not sit in that reflective energy as much as I probably need to just take a pause, right? I don't have to live in it. I don't have to wallow in it. But I do need to just take a pause as I'm shifting from sort of one state of being to another. And that's really what I feel like the shift of the year does. Like it allows me, even though nothing changes in terms of like where I live, or like it's not, the season doesn't change, the weather doesn't change, like nothing changes externally. It's all this internal shift of like this mindset of end of the year means that I can really set aside the things that I'm like done with or just really aren't working for me, and I can shift into this new thing that I want to do, or these new things that I want to try, or just, you know, change how I approach things. And this little combo just gives me the opportunity, or I should say encourages me to take that opportunity to sit down and just have a moment to breathe, to sit in it, to experience it. Just, again, not wallow, but embody it for a moment. To be present here right now, and before I move on to all the other things. And it also gives me the opportunity to reflect on what I have done, what I've created, and sometimes that's a much needed energy for me. I am just very briefly again going to mention the Tabletop Tarot because it is a deck that I worked with in December. I love this deck. I've decided, I think I've hinted to it or like been like, maybe it might be my favorite deck of 2023. Nope, I've decided this is my favorite deck of 2023 because this one is just like everything I love all in one deck, which is amazing. But it's also a fantastic reader, and I've mentioned many times it's like the book Legends and Lattes in a deck, which is phenomenal. And it's such a great reader. I won't go into it again because I talked about it in my memorable deck videos. I think I talked about it in November as well because I believe I did use it in November. I have paired this with the Magical Spirit. It's beautiful. Krista, Crochet Witch Tarot, who's the creator of the Crochet Witch Oracle, she had shared in my Discord this with the Cottage Witch Oracle, which is the deck she created, and it's phenomenal. I've now played with those two together. As I mentioned, I most often use it with the Women in Myth, but there's so many things that it actually pairs with in my collection, which is fantastic. But this is the one deck that legitimately has not left my table in at least 2 months now. Pretty much since the day I opened it. Let's just leave That right there with the 10 of Cups. This was the card that sold me on the deck. I have no intentions of putting it away anytime soon. Okay, real quick, another little pairing that I'm just gonna like scoot in here and mention really quickly because I did actually work with this pairing quite a bit in December. This is the Beautiful Creatures Tarot, which I pretty much use like an oracle deck because of the keywords and the artwork. And it's gorgeous. I love it. This is like, I mentioned it in my memorable decks pairing because this little pairing is definitely a pairing that I have been using quite often for those days when I'm feeling quite angsty, and that seems to be quite often right now. I'm just in this angsty vibe, and these two together are fabulous. I'm just gonna do a real quick little pairing flip because I did already show these and talk about them quite a bit in my memorable decks video, but I just want to show you again in case you didn't see it how phenomenal these two decks are together. I again use the Beautiful Creatures like an oracle deck, so we have Intuition with the Three of Swords and the Wheel of Fortune. Gorgeous. I love it. These two decks are just my angsty inner teenager is coming out to play or needs to come out to play, or I don't have time for her right now, but I'm feeling it. So it, like, as I mentioned in that video, it completely validates it for me, which is fantastic. Regret with the World and the 10 of Coins. I love these two decks. I love them even more together. These two have just, they've been phenomenal, and I've pretty much kept them as almost like a little matching set. I do use the villains on its own, and I do use the villains occasionally with the Blessed Bee cards, which was the original pairing that I explored with this particular tarot deck. But ever since I got the Beautiful Creatures in, it's kind of like these two just kind of exist together, and I do work with them most times together. But I will pull out the villains just anytime I'm feeling like I need a little bit of that little villain energy in my life. And sometimes I just do. I love this Knight of Cups with Gaston. So we have Unity, the Sun, and the Knight of Cups. They just, I don't know, there's just something about them that just, it makes me happy. It speaks to my angsty inner teenager, and like, it's just, it has all the feels for me. I love it. So the last deck that I want to talk about this month that I worked with is the Cozy Witch Tarot deck. I went back and forth on this deck because I wasn't sure about the messages on the bottom, and everybody, it looks very, very young. And I will tell you, as somebody who is trying to learn to illustrate, like I'm doing this whole year-long thing now, not really a program, but a process over from Yule of 2023 to Yule of 2024, it's just the random dates I chose, of trying to learn to illustrate better, to be a better illustrator. And so let me tell you, somebody who's like drawing every single day now, and I'm drawing the character that I chose, because you pick one character and you're just supposed to like draw them over and over and over again for quite some time until you feel like you've kind of perfected it in different variations and whatnot. And the character that I chose is a little bit like older, and so it's hard to depict in an illustration. So now that I've kind of looking at it through that lens, I kind of see it a little bit more as like, since it's got this cartoony energy, it's a little bit more timeless to me in that sense. Whereas the first time I saw it, I was like, this deck is too young for me. Like, I'm not here anymore. Like, and I haven't been in this space for, you know, several decades now. So at first I was like, it's too young. It's not going to work for me. I don't know about the messages on the bottom because I feel like they're really limiting sometimes. And I still kind of stand by that. Sometimes they're too specific and sometimes they're too limiting. But this art style and this artwork is very charming. I do really like the interpretation of the tarot through this deck. And I found that this deck is one that I was actually using when I wasn't feeling real great. So it's, I don't know if that's where it's permanently gonna live. This card though, it kind of, there's just something about that card that I just don't really care for. But like, I think I was talking about it in a member video too, and I was like, I don't resonate with this, like this energy. But yeah, that's totally an energy I can resonate with. Like in a big old hoodie with torn jeans on, surrounded by books, and like, yeah, that I can totally resonate with. So I've really changed my perspective on this deck kind of the first few times I saw it, and then I finally just took a chance on it and got it, and I was like, okay, I do get it. I feel like I'm able to step outside of the complete lack of any sort of age diversity. It does great in diversity in other ways, but not in age diversity. I love this card. This card's one of my favorites in the deck. But I feel like, you know, some of it is very timeless. Like we can all step into this sort of energy, you know, letting go of self-imposed limitations, sitting by the window, enjoying a, you know, a warm beverage, and just like being in the moment. Like that's something we can all resonate with, I think. It's something we can see ourselves in, or at least I can. Some of it is, you know, a little bit outside of my own personal realm of experience, but I see where they're going. I see what they're getting at. I mean, because like I've been there. I've been in the hunting through the couch cushions for change. Not for many, many years, many decades, but I've been there. And so sometimes when a card like this comes up for me, it more like takes me back to that time and place. And I can look at the blessings that I've been given since then, right? The blessings that I've experienced since then. And so there's a bit of like, I guess, sort of nostalgia and remembering for me in this deck, because the characters are young, and even though I can see them and look beyond that and see them as kind of like just timeless archetypes or representations of the energy, sometimes they do hit really close to home in something that I've experienced. And so I think that's really cool. Like I really enjoy that aspect of it. It's been an interesting one because like sometimes it just hits in really different spaces for me. Sometimes it hits in that I remember back when I was this age. Sometimes it makes me think about, you know, things I have going on right now or energies that I need to cultivate right this 5 minutes. It's also a deck, as I mentioned, that I used whenever I'm not feeling real well. So like we actually were all quite sick here for like a whole week. And I used this deck quite a bit during that time because it just felt like it gave me the comfort and support that I needed at that time. I've really been enjoying getting to know it. I feel like it's one that I will probably keep, but I feel like it also kind of sits in a particular sort of space for me. Maybe when I am feeling a bit nostalgic, it's kind of like this weird like 6 of Cups sort of energy. I guess that's where it sits. It's kind of a 6 of Cups deck for me. But also, like, I found it to be really comforting when I wasn't feeling good. So, like, there's that. So that's where it's sitting. But yeah, that was an interesting one because I wasn't really sure I was gonna work with it. I'll be honest, I haven't even looked at the guidebook. Haven't even opened it. I feel like I don't need to when I have not only the tarot associations and the artwork, but then there's also these little phrases on the cards. So I really didn't need to get into the guidebook. So I just didn't, but it's an interesting one. It's a little 6 of Cupsy and I don't feel good. That's where this deck is sitting for me right now. So real quick before we wrap things up, let's take a little flip through my tarot journal. This is done for the year. And I'm actually really excited. I'll show you a little quick flip through of the whole thing, but I feel like it's the first time in years that I've actually stayed in one whole journal for a whole entire year. So that was really exciting. So this was our cover page for December, our endings and beginnings in the monthly medicine. This was my sort of title page for all of our energies for the week and the decks that I chose. I'm very much in this sketchy sort of thing right now. Here we have our embrace, and every week we start with like a card pull, and I think I use the magical spirit every single week for that. So we'll see that throughout here, and I have just, you know, my readings. I print this off with my little Canon Ivy. We have a medicine reading on Wednesday, which is like our big spread for the week, and then we had our wrap up on Fridays, which I sometimes did. I did not journal, but I sometimes did just the cards, and I just pulled the cards and sort of had a moment of reflection with them. But again, this week I was using the Gentle Tarot and the Magical Spirit. And then for our release, again, here was my energy for the week. There's that fairy card, and then I was working with the Nuages and the Women of Myth with looking at, you know, how can I better acknowledge what I have released and honor that. Then we have growth here. Again, I love this one, the space time itself. That was such a fantastic one for this particular week. Using the Mystic Palette Tarot and the Isis Oracle, which is fantastic. And then the last one, which is our Remember. And again, I pulled the Magical Spirit for the start of my week and then worked with the Future Ancestor and the Hedge Witch Botanical. And that is it. That is all I did. I just had my one spread for each week. December's very busy around here, and it definitely was this year because of all the stuff I had going on. So I kept things really simple. And it was really cool. So, I mean, let's just for fun, let's take a quick flip through the whole thing, because I probably won't do this again because I'm done with 2023. I'm ready to move on. But anyway, here was my cover page that I did. I set an intention. Anyway, that's that. It's always fun to look back at. So here was our new intentions. This was where we started. I'm just gonna do a quick flip through. This was back when I was doing Simple Sundays. I'm sorry, those are just gone and done. I can't manage all of that anymore. I am making a book though. So if you like the Simple Sundays, they are gonna be in a book. So we had our themes. We're just gonna take a quick flip through just to see. I feel like I started off better with the focusing on the writing maybe. I don't know. Had lots of extra stuff in here to start with, and then eventually I just really focused it down into the monthly medicine, because I found that that's really what I wanted this journal to end up being. So here was February. Got some pinky and purples going on. I guess I did do a fairly good job at the beginning of like really just focusing in, but I need some of the ephemera. It makes me happy. I need some of it. Like sometimes that's just something we need. I'm just kind of skipping through some stuff here. We don't need to look at every single page. Clearly I put no effort into that page. It's always interesting to look back, because also I can see how things change for me in terms of my journaling and like what I journal. So like I feel like I was really focusing in, like still as of March, like honing in on that. I want to really focus on the thing and not the extras, like not the journaling and whatnot. Clearly that was the case here. Probably, I'll be honest, probably because this month in March, I was preparing for this, which was our Weaver's Fair, which was our very first narrative experience, which pretty much jump-started the whole thing that we're doing in 2024. And this one, this is my favorite month. I rewrote the whole story in here and then added in all my card pulls along the way. So this one was fun. This is my inspiration for next year and what my journaling is going to look like next year. We're going to be here a while if I don't pick up the pace. But it's so cool to just kind of flip through and look back. I will go back and like read through some of this stuff too. So in May we did Once Upon a Time, kind of continuing with that fairy tale sort of energy. This time not a fairy tale I wrote, but fairy tales of others. Just fantastic. I really enjoyed this month too. I feel like these were really, really fun months that we did a lot of really interesting things that kind of like helped me to kind of step beyond some of the things I normally do. Again, here we also did the Enchanted Realms, and this was where we were kind of like combining tarot with some visualization exercises, which was really cool. We created like these little worlds with our decks and our readings and these little realms, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. It's also fun to just look back at like the things that we did and the decks that I used and the energies we were working with. So this was Ebb and Flow for July, going with that kind of yin yang coming and going energy, which is awesome. Love this combo. It's also fun to look back at my decks. I'm doing something different with my tarot journaling in 2024, so we'll see how that goes. Oh, I also really love this month. So this was the Into the Well month, and I kind of like with the practice, I kind of struggled with it itself for various other reasons, which I won't get into in this video, but I really enjoyed, I annotated this month. So this was the month that I went back and annotated all of my own readings, and it was so fun. I totally need to do that again. Yeah. Okay, so this is me not being simple in my tarot journal, right? I feel like that went out the wayside, and about halfway through the year, I realized that I'm just not a person that can exclude that from my work. It's just such an integral part of it. That was such a fun month. I need to annotate more. Then we moved into blank spaces, had that blank slate energy, which was fantastic. I mean, look at the difference in how my journaling style has changed just throughout the course of 1 year. It's so fun. I really just ended up letting it just be whatever it wanted to be. And then we did a ghost story in October, which was another narrative adventure, which went way into the shadow for me, which was kind of interesting. Again, I wrote the whole story. So I have the whole story in here as well as my card pulls. Yeah, this was a fun month. This was, again, another narrative experience. I really enjoyed that month, even though it was brutal. It was brutal. And then November, we had shenanigans where we were just like, oh my goodness, this one was fun because I wrote little limericks for everything. Y'all recently saw this one, so I won't spend too much time on it. Again, I was trying to stay, I feel like I went back, right? Interesting, right? I went back to a little bit more of a simplistic thing. And looking back at this, I know that in November, I was super busy because November and December, I was full on in the finishing up the final things for the 2024 practice because everything started releasing in December. Most of my time was spent focused on that. So it's really, really interesting to see how I like started the year. Let's look. I started the year pretty like much more simple, right? I mean, simple for me. I know it's all relative. Simple for me. And then like around the Weaver's Fair, I got really into it. This one, oh, love this month. This, I don't know, this and the Weaver's Fair, I'm really torn between those two. Really loved the Weaver's Fair, what I did. Not just the practices, but what I did in my journal. That's mostly what I'm talking about. Really love that one, writing out the whole story, which is fantastic because that's what I'm going to be doing again. Now that I'm looking through this, I think I'm going to do that for the practice for 2024. And then I think my secondary tarot journal, maybe I will really dive into this annotation method because I really enjoyed this. I got so much out of doing this method of annotating my own readings. If you want to hear more about it, it was back in my August wrap up. So you can pop back over to that video and I talk more about annotating my own tarot readings. But like, how cool is this? I love being able to look back. I think this is the first time in a lot of years that I've actually had it all in one place because I've done various different types of journaling. So I'm really looking forward to doing this again in 2024, although I am going to have 2 different tarot journals. Just because I've had a few people ask, I'm going to talk about this one really quickly. I talked about this a lot more in some member videos where I talked about what I'm going to be doing and why I'm doing certain things. Like, can I ever get this open? This was my Sacred Readings journal, which I started in, I was like trying to look back, in March. And I did do quite a bit of work in it. I'm not going to flip through the whole thing just because like I've shown it before. It's in a video, I think, talking about my sacred readings. And because of the amount of work that I was doing towards the end of the year, I think the last I did in here was in October. Yeah, because this is when I really started getting into having to prep. And my workload just increased like 2-fold. So I ended up putting this on hold because I just didn't have the time and the space, and I was like focusing on the monthly medicine instead because that's really where I wanted my, where I wanted my time and attention to go. Kind of play the stack the decks up. I hate that game. So that is a look at the primary decks that I worked with in December. I do like get into my collection and I'll pull random decks, but it's just like kind of one-off readings, so I generally don't include those in these videos or we would be here forever. So that's it for me today. I'm ready. Let's go 2024. Like, bring it on. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. As always, you'll find links for everything you've seen here in the description box of this video. I hope that you all had a wonderful December and a wonderful 2023, and I wish you many blessings moving into the new year.